Hi, Don, Dave. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay, DCA, this bill, if it passes, will have the power to fine associations, homeowner associations, $2,000 per instance if they don't get their minutes out on time. Don, is this a real bill?
It is a bill. It hasn't gone anywhere. It shouldn't go anywhere. I'm certainly for making sure that there's some credibility and people have access to what's going on when a board is meeting, but they're all volunteers. So someone's typing those minutes, you got to give them some reasonable amount of time, a week, 2 weeks to get the minutes out to people. I think is all reasonable. Plus you have meetings that people should be able to attend or at least Zoom into.
Dave, my research, which is off the internet, which is inaccurate many times, that's why you're here, and Don, says that we already have a law that mandates when minutes should be available. Is that true in New Jersey?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think this pending law is all about punishment, which I guess depends on how you look at it. If you look at it, if you're in favor of the law, you're looking at more as a encouragement to do what you're supposed to do. Some people might look at it as a way to punish people for not doing it. So the law appears to be simply creating a mechanism to allow the government to punish associations who fail to make these minutes available when they're supposed to be available.
Don, I'm going to ask Dave this, but before I wanted to throw it over to you if you wanted to add something beforehand. Does the DCA alone have the ability just to snap their fingers if this bill passed and bang, your association has to send a check for $2,000?
Well, if it passes the Senate and the Assembly, and then it goes to the governor's office and he signs it, then, the typical bill within 90 days becomes law.
Dave, if this did pass, what recourse would associations have? Because people will be quick to report these kind of infractions. And are they going to find people first and ask questions later?
Yes, and that's the problem with this kind of law, at least in my view. I mean, there's certainly associations should do what they're obligated to do. I don't think anybody disagrees with the idea that there should be minutes available to owners with respect to meetings that should be open. That's a fundamental point. But the problem really is this enforcement mechanism. The DCA, unless part of this law is to kill due process for associations, the government would issue some sort of penalty, and then you'd have a certain number of days to quote unquote appeal it, creating an administrative law process, which would generate a significant amount of attorney fees potentially. Although I think associations might have the right to an insurance defense if these things were to take place. But I have other thoughts about it. But I think at most the law, if it's adopted, would just allow the DCA to be more forceful. And yes, it would encourage owners to file complaints because they don't charge. There's no charge for filing complaints.
Don, I'm going to leave the last word to you here. How should associations be reacting to a bill like this if they don't like it? Should they be concerned about it, or should they just be, it's never going to pass, we don't need to worry about it?
No, I think you should be contacting your assemblymen and senators, expressing your position, especially if you're on a board and you're representing a group of people. You should make sure that we're aware of that.
Dave, Bill 1367, this looks pretty good. Something about stopping developers from prolonging control unfairly. What is this bill about?
Yeah, this is a type of law that becomes important depending upon the ebbs and flows of an economy and of a real estate market. When everything's hot, developers start a development, and then shortly thereafter, they've sold the project and owners take over, and none of this sort of timing issue really becomes important. But in other situations, when the real estate market is not as hot, developers may have difficulty closing a project, selling all the homes. And so the developer controls the association for a longer period. With this law that's pending, the law already requires a developer to give up control after 75% of the homes are sold. This law, the more important part of it, I think, is the part of the law that says that, or 2 years after substantial completion of a condominium structure, the control would have to be given up. The earlier of the 2 days. So the earlier of 75% sales or 2 years from substantial completion of a condominium structure, that would be certainly helpful to associations, to owners. Developers, I gather, might be opposed to it, but I don't know. Frankly, my experience is that developers aren't particularly interested in keeping control. The ones that have bothered to ask me, they don't seem to care that much about it.
Don, this seems like a winner for everybody.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't this one pass?
I don't see any problem with it and stuff. It makes a whole lot of sense. You want the developer to be in control while the project's being built. once the 75% is built or the 2 years go by, it certainly should go forward to the people that are actually owning the property.
Don, who do you see that would be against this bill?
Don't know.
Nobody? Okay, we'll see what happens.
I
We'll see
think
if
so.
they
Yeah.
we'll see if they come out of the woodwork, and then
Well-
we'll have Don back to figure out why it didn't pass.
It's interesting
Sure.
too. Oh,
It's interesting that none of these bills have gone to committee or come out of committee. So there's got to be someone that's blocking them.
and I was gonna add too. It's funny, like on a state level or on a local level, which I think is a good thing. You tend to see a lot of potential laws that are really not partisan. They're not ideological. I mean, on a federal level, we tend to see those kinds of things as Americans. But on a local level, you look at a law like this, and this is really a law about interest groups, like from financial interest groups, like who would be for it, who would be against it. But like on the basis of sort of logic, I don't know that developers and owners would really disagree. Developers want to be done with the governing of an association. It creates liability on their part. The longer they control an association, the more they're liable for stuff. And owners want to control early because they want to control their own destiny. So this is the kind of thing where it passes, it would seem to be something that would be favored by both sides of the issue.
When are we going to have our answer, Don?
when you're able to bring it to committee and get the committee chair to allow it to pass, and you may have to wait for the next governor for that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of sponsors on this, but the law's been around forever, based on what I can tell. So I guess no one's really interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, look at you have more people that are co-sponsoring the banning of smoking in casinos than you need to pass it as a law, and
Right.
you still can't get it up on the floor.
Right.
Dave, Bill S1013 prohibits passing insurance deductibles to individual unit owners. Man, I work with a lot of states, Dave. I thought we were not already doing that.
Well, in New Jersey, we are almost always doing this. The statute existing when it comes to condominiums mandates that deductibles be passed on to owners that are affected by the loss, unless your master deed or your bylaws say otherwise. So from what I can tell, this potential law would completely undo that. This would be a significant change to what the law is currently. There are a lot of reasons to change the law the way the proponent of this law would like it changed. My view, though, is that the situation as it's currently set up is correct, which is why it's been in effect since the Condominium Act was created. I mean, this is a 40, 45, 50-year law type of dynamic here with how insurance deductibles have been handled in condominiums in New Jersey for that long. And it's also consistent with how most states handle it.
But it says, the way I'm reading it, Dave, and I'm probably not understanding it properly, it says it bans community associations from charging a unit owner or a group of unit owners the deductible. So they're picking out one group of unit owners,
Right,
and charging them a different amount or an assessment for an insurance issue. Am I reading it wrong?
No.
Because that I thought was not acceptable in most cases.
That's not really what it is. What happens is if you have an insurance in condominiums, insurance covers. This is so complicated to explain. Insurance is not about fault. It's about coverage. So condominium insurance covers the outside of a building and in some instances the inside of a building, even your cabinets, perhaps. The statute currently says that when you have a claim, water leaks from the guy upstairs, or there's a hurricane, there's a claim. And there's a deductible for that claim, like we all have with our car insurance and everything, a deductible. That deductible is a deficiency. So if you need $100,000 to fix what's been destroyed by the incident, you only get 95 grand, but you still need the 5. So who pays the 5? Under current law in New Jersey and many other states, you assess the 5 against only those people that are affected by the claim, not against everybody else. This law would make it so that everybody else has to share in the $5,000. And the reason that's a problem, and the reason why the legislature has not changed this for 50 plus years, is because the way the current insurance market works, individual people, if they get their own personal insurance, their HO6 coverage, if they get their regular insurance for whatever it is, a couple $100 a year, you can get coverage for your share of a loss. So if your share of the $5,000 deductible in my hypothetical is $2,000, and you have the right insurance through State Farm or something, let's say your personal insurance, you submit the $2,000 to State Farm and they will cover it. They will send you a check for it, less your own deductible, which might be $75. So the way the insurance market is set up now is by allowing the deductible to be passed along to individual owners. They're then able to just simply take that money and pass it on to their own insurance company So for all intents and purposes, nobody pays anything except the insurance companies. So I think the people who drafted this law probably haven't thought deeply into the issue. They're thinking more about maybe one constituent contacted them and said, well, this is really horrible. I was made to pay a $10,000 deductible. But if that owner had had her own HO6 insurance, she wouldn't have had to do that.
Don, is that how politics works? Because I think I read this properly. Dave explained it to me. I found it a little confusing, the summary I received. I guess the only people that would be for this then would be maybe some insurance companies. I don't know if that's what Dave was implying or not.
That's how I see it too. Bad bill.
How does something like this get put forward, though? Is it pure politics, Don?
Sometimes you get, people are smart enough, they get a dozen or 24 people to call a particular office. And so you seem like you're inundated with a particular policy that people want when it really isn't. It's just 1 or 2 people getting a whole lot of people to call. It's like when you fill the room with 50 people, the officials are more likely to listen to them.
Only 24? Because I'd like to have a statue. So if I get 24 people to call your office, can there be a statue of me on the boardwalk here?
Unfortunately, that's usually what happens. You get 24 people, and that seems like a lot of people. And if an elected official is smart, he would go out to the community and ask that at a public meeting and see what the response is.
So Don, I've asked you this before, so I think I should ask it again. Should associations keep an eye on these things, though? Because theoretically, they could slip through.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's so many other groups that are watching this all the time. Associations should absolutely be on top of what's going on a monthly basis. That's going to affect their pocketbook.
And Ray, I'll add 2 things. One is, Don, my opinion, the Assemblyman's correct, because as regular people, there's even ways to set up computer notice of when the legislature moves a bill or you can get like actual notice of it through it's not very complicated to do. My staff keeps a list of all the bills that are pending and what stage they're at. You get notices of when they come up. So it's not very difficult to do. The second thing is, I think this insurance related thing has become more of an issue now because associations have taken on larger deductibles to manage the rise in premiums. So obviously, if you have an insurance policy, just think about it with your car. If you have a lower deductible, you pay more. Your insurance company says, well, if you go with a deductible of $1,000, we'll charge you less. So you go with a higher deductible, which means you pay the first $1,000 of every claim. I think owners are finding, and maybe they're complaining to the legislature now because they're finding that their associations have taken on deductibles of $25,000, $50,000, because their premiums are skyrocketing. And if you increase your deductibles, you can help manage your overall premium costs, which will then allow the associations not to raise assessments every year. So that's probably maybe why this is, because I noticed that this law was adopted, or this law has only been out there. It has some additional sponsors, it looks like, but only more recently. So it seems like maybe more people are interested in it recently, maybe because of the high deductible problem that's going on now. And I'm not sure there's any way to fix that. Deductibles go up because of the insurance market. I'm not sure there's much you can do about that.
Yeah, Dave, I think you're right on the money there. Condominium associations are concerned. I'm talking about individual property owners, because the cost of belonging to the association increases each year. And so that's the only time people come out to a meeting. And usually whoever's in charge or their attorney or someone else that's knowledgeable explains that the biggest cost is one, insurance. Usually the second one is because you let your surplus disappear. And so now you got to replace the roofs, and all that money that you thought was being held for that is no longer available. So then you get down to the nitty gritty. Let's not remove the snow unless it's more than an inch. Let's close the pool on Wednesdays, because they're just frustrated. They started with a $200 a month condo fee, and now it's $800. And I do get that. What I hear from seniors is that that's the issue.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many, I don't want to pick on police and fire and teachers, but that's who are talking to me about buying a second home in Florida, after they retire. And they refuse to go into a condo association because they don't want to get hit with the $1,000 a month. They're moving from New Jersey to avoid that as their property tax. They don't want to go somewhere where it gets transferred into a condo fee. But the point is that you belong to the condo association so that you're protected, so that you do have the insurance, so that the sidewalk is repaired. If you let individual owners repair the sidewalk, it just wouldn't get done. You can look at any town, they don't replace the trees, you don't replace the sidewalks and things until you get hit with a lawsuit. Then all of a sudden, you lose your lawsuit, you pay your deductible, and guess what? You fix the sidewalk. So a condo association is usually a little bit ahead of that. Repair the stairs before they fall apart, repair the concrete when it's no longer safe to move ahead, make sure that the insurance premiums are paid. And no one likes it, but insurance costs are going up. It's like health. Some things we can't control.
Don, Bill 2480 requires municipal utilities to maintain the hydrants on HOA roads. Why are they not just doing that now? Why do I have to depend on my HOA to take care of one of the most critical components of keeping my house from burning down?
Unfair. If I live anywhere else, you're going to have a fire hydrant. I'm going to have to make sure that the city maintains it. How do they maintain it? With property tax? What do condo association owners do now? They pay their property tax. It should be included. Just a bad concept right now that they have somehow are responsible for keeping and maintaining the fire hydrant. The fire hydrant is going to be used either for their association or anyone else that needs it. It's the municipality that's responsible for that. Those costs should not be passed on to the individual condo associations.
Dave, who would be against? I don't think there's an association that wants to be in charge of their fire hydrants.
No, I mean, who would be against it would be, League of Municipalities, people that run the local governments who already think that they don't have enough money. This is an unfunded mandate, I guess, from a legislature making a local government do something it's not paying for. But New Jersey's Municipal Services Act requires municipalities to do certain things: snow, ice removal, trash, leaves, that kind of thing, street lighting. The fire hydrants were always exempt from that. When the legislature first created that law a long, long time ago, 1989, there's some legislative history from back then that provided that many legislatures try to get fire hydrants included. But some people have always been effective in keeping the act from being amended to include fire hydrants. This would change that.
Don, but why? Because you can just tax homeowners anyway, right? I meant, why? What would the goal be of a municipality to try to push this on? They can just tax people themselves and take it over.
Correct.
So
There's
why
no
does this
issue
even
there.
exist? How did this happen?
I don't know. It's a good bill to pass. The fire hydrants should be maintained equally across a particular municipality. It's the fire company that needs to be making sure that they're maintained properly. There are exceptions. If you're a steam cleaner, you can rent a meter and pay for usage for the water tapping a fire hydrant. But for the most part, the fire hydrants are for public safety in the event of a fire. They should be maintained by the municipality. And you also have the concept that fire hydrants are hooked up to each other. So you don't want to have any break in that service. So municipality should be maintaining the entire system.
I was thinking the same thing now, like types of fire hydrants, like what a hassle. Dave, I'll ask you, who would be against this? The insurance companies probably don't want to have it, right? Because they want to wash their hands of it. Like who's for this?
I would assume that the people who would be responsible to do stuff if this law passed would be against it. Normally, I would think people resist taking on more liability. So why would local fire companies want to have more responsibilities? Why would the mayor and the township manager want to have more responsibility? I mean, without getting too philosophical, part of the reason why municipalities allow for private housing only in associations is to privatize the services. In the old days, we built developments without, every road was public and the government did everything. There were no gatehouses, that was it. Now, when municipalities approve a development, the hope is that it will be a private development run by an HOA so that the government doesn't have to be bothered with the storm sewers and the basin and the road. And it's better in general for the municipality to take on the residents and the tax revenue, but not take on the exposure, the cost, and the liability. I mean, if you're looking at it from a Machiavellian sort of pure power dynamic, it seems obvious to me.
Well, why wouldn't a mayor of any kind of town or city want to not be in charge of as much as possible? Doesn't that expand their power base?
Well, a mayor is going to look to cut costs wherever he could. So if he can pass on the responsibility for this or anything else, he's certainly going to be in favor for that. but that doesn't mean that it's right. It's not up to the individual mayor or city council. They have certain responsibilities. And you have a fire department, you have a police department, you have public works to do exactly that. It's not up to the individual public works guy to decide whether or not he's going to sweep your streets. If he's getting paid and he's sitting behind a street cleaner, then he's got his clean the streets. And this is the same thing for the water company. There should be no question. This should be a universal cost for the municipality. The individual owners in an association already paying a property tax based on their assessed values. It should include the fire hydrants.
Okay, Don. So when should I put my money on this passing?
I don't think you'll see this come up. And again, League of Municipalities are going to be against it. Everyone else is going to say it's a good. It should not be passed on to the condo association.
Ugh. Okay. All right. Next one is A2450. Don, do you know all these by heart?
No. As a matter of fact, I already had joked with Brett, who gave it to me about 20 minutes before we got on, the actual bills that we were going to be talking
You are
about.
amazing, because I feel like I'm thinking here like you're like a genius. I'm just throwing numbers at you and you're just like.
So, I can tell you this past session, which was on Monday, we had 130 bills. On Friday, there were 40 bills. So they added between 40 and 120, all those bills on Saturday. So, you needed to read them all. That takes 3 or 4 hours. And then I sat with my chief of staff, Brett Bobbin, and Adriana from our office for a little over 3 hours Sunday afternoon, going over them, and actually didn't finish them until we were riding up to Trenton on Monday morning. So sometimes you get bills thrown at you. You have to try to figure out what's going on and what's common sense, and you have to have some certain principles that you go behind.
Well, how many constituents do you have, Don?
It doesn't take 3 hours to read them. It takes 31 hours to read them.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate that. Honestly, I usually read a summary because I have Brett. So I read the summary of the report. I read what people say are the pros and cons. I look at how everyone voted on it if it went through committee. And then I look at all the positive and negative responses from everyone that's bothered to contact us. But that's on that issue alone on the different bills. But
And how many constituents do you have?
Everyone has the same, about 225,000.
Wow. So I would imagine you must make a hell of a lot of money, because all my buddies that are responsible for that many people are making the hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
You're running a company that big.
The $49,000 is there because it's considered a part-time job, but I can tell you it's difficult not to spend 50 hours a week on our part-time job.
Bill 2450, Dave, requires community management entities in New Jersey to have a state license before they could take any new management companies on. First, I'm surprised it's not managers, but Dave, what is this bill about?
Well, it is, Matt. It would be anybody who wants to be a property manager, whether a company who provides managers as employees or employees themselves. They'd have to have a license, like a barber and lawyers, whoever else in this state has to have a license.
Don, this is one of the biggest topics around the country. It's state to state. What is your feedback on this? I'm sure this is something you hear about all the time.
Yeah, licensing is important, because what's going to happen, again, the condo association is going to go out and they're going to say, what's the lowest bid I can get for maintaining my property? And all you have to do is be the lowest bidder. It doesn't mean you're qualified or capable of doing that. So I think there needs to be some type of certification. So you're getting the lowest qualified bidder as opposed to the lowest bidder. The only way we can do that is through some licensing practice, and you've got to be able to take out people that are bad managers of property.
Dave, true or false, you could have a high-rise condominium in New Jersey, have a $10 million budget, and you could hire a guy off the street to run it with absolutely no background check, no past history. They could literally just walk off the street and just start running the association on behalf of the board. Is that true or false?
Your hypothetical is true, I think.
And licensing would maybe not make that so easy, correct?
Well, I guess that's the thing. I mean, I don't know enough about licensing in terms of like what it actually means. I mean, I know we get a driver's license and then you have it for the rest of your life. You don't take ongoing classes. You get a professional license. You have to take ongoing classes every other year, get some kind of you don't take like a test, I don't think, at least from a lawyer license. So a lot of this comes down like what type of license we're talking about. Are you going to make a property manager go to Trenton every other year and take a test and lay her off, fire her if she doesn't get a 75 on the exam? Or are we just talking about someone having to take online courses 3 times a year and they got the ball game on, they're watching, and the course is going on in the background, they're not even paying attention to it, and they're, secretaries writing down the numbers you get to make sure to prove you attended. But I'd have to, if I were in the legislature, I'd have to learn more about what licensing for this type of thing would mean. To me, as a citizen, it seems like it's just an extra sort of layer of big government. But I have to learn more about it because I may not be educated as much as to what licensing does, how it protects us, how burdensome it is or isn't. It might not be burdensome at all.
When legislators pass something like this, are all the details already done? Or are they just passing this broad concept? Oh, we're going to have licensing, or is all those really critical details already in place?
So both of that happens. Sometimes you get a bill, it's really not spelled out, or it sounds really good, but there's no financing or assignment on who's going to manage it or take over it. I get your point, Dave, of another level of bureaucracy. I think the licensing, driver's license, is a bad example. If elected officials had any stamina, they would require you, once you hit about 70 years of age, for you to take a driver's license over again and things. But we're not going to do that because we're not going to lose that amount of votes. Because those are the people that still come to the election on election day. So there's certain common sense. I think you hit the 2 points. You can't allow people just to go online and like you said, hit yes, yes, yes at the end of it and things. But there needs to be some type of restrictions. And I think there needs to be some way to remove licenses if you have people that aren't doing the job of running an association properly. And shame on any association that if you're bidding out the work, you're not interviewing them, you're not checking on other people that they've managed or organizations that they've managed and made the phone calls. It's just common sense.
Well, right now out there in New Jersey, if a manager, God forbid, steals money, then your recourse as an association that's the victim, you can ask the prosecutor to do something. He or she may or may not do something. But even if the prosecutor does something, there's no guarantee you get your quote unquote money back. You could sue a manager or a management company civilly, but the legal fees might exceed the amount of money that was stolen. So in a lot of ways, if licensing would allow some way to deal with this potential problem, it might be useful, because I don't know that associations have many useful options. If a manager steals $35,000, my experience tells me that the government, the prosecutor, quote unquote, is not going to do anything at all for that. And even if the prosecutor does something, it doesn't mean you get your money back. So what's the point?
Where are we with this? Do we have the details on this, or we don't?
We don't have the details on this, but we have licensing even for landscapers and things, certainly for hairstylists. So there's got to be some type of standard here and stuff. We just don't have the information on this bill. It shouldn't move forward until we do.
All right, and I'll keep tabs on it, and maybe we'll re-explore it and see where it's at, because it looks like we have to find more. I don't have an opinion on it because it doesn't sound like I can, because we don't have the information that's needed. So,
fair statement.
Dave, I'll start with you on this one. The summary off the internet for Bill S4130 fixes a lost notice problem for safety inspections, designed to prevent situations where critical inspection notices don't reach boards. Sounds crazy to me.
It is crazy, but not so much because notices don't get where they're supposed to go. But the way I understand this potential law, the person who came up with it, I think, is confused as to the way the world works. And when it comes to condominiums, the DCA has inspection rights and authority. Even though it's a condominium, the way New Jersey law has been interpreted for a long time now is condominiums are treated like apartments and hotels. So the government has the power to enforce safety standards like carbon monoxide detectors and missing, fire doors don't close, that kind of thing. But the way it works now is these notices are all done through the associations. The DCA doesn't contact individual people. So I don't know why they need a list of individual people. In fact, the DCA is going to be like, we don't want this. we want to contact one person. We want to contact the person running the property. We don't want to contact 600 different people. The way it works now is the DCA contacts the association through the individual on the registration form that the DCA has. They don't need a list of individual owners because they don't ever contact individual owners. They deal directly and exclusively with the condominium association. So I'm not even sure why anybody even thought of this. This is likely the result of some confused situation. I'm not sure what the point of it is.
Okay, so my summary is off then, as this is why people shouldn't rely on the internet and always try to grab people like Don if they can. Or are you?
Well, no, I think your summary is correct.
I'm hearing you're telling me that this was about the DCA has to contact every unit owner if there's a safety deficiency compared to the association. The summary was that the board members weren't finding out about it.
No, I read the proposed law to require management companies to keep their lists of owners current, and so that DCA would be able to access the list of owners.
Whatever you read is right. I'll tell you right now, because my stuff's off the internet. Okay. Whatever you read is right.
Yeah, I think that's what the law is, and it's unnecessary because that's not how the DCA operates. They don't, when it comes to condominiums, they don't contact individual owners. And they don't want to because that would require more work. They want to contact the associations, and then the associations force the owners to comply. That's how the DCA and the Bureau of Housing has been doing it since. I mean, I've been representing associations of condominiums for 30 plus years, and the DCA has been doing it that way since I started, and based on the case law for decades before that. You know,
Don, just so you know, because you're with us today, there's a reason that I like to bring up what I read on the internet, because that's where 90% of the people go nowadays. So when I present something that's inaccurate, I like to show that, hey, look how I pulled my research up and I was completely off base. Don, this bill, where do you think about it? Where are we at with it?
People don't know where to get information anymore because of the internet. And so, one person repeats another. Finally, it's absolutely untrue. In this particular case, it's the association that has the responsibility. So I don't think you need to get the 90-year-old homeowner all excited because she's responsible for the 3 lights that need to be replaced. She's paying a condo fee. There's a condo association that's elected by her and other people, and then there's a management company, and ultimately they probably subcontracted that out to someone to fix it. So contacting the condo association is correct. The individual owner shouldn't be held responsible other than paying a management fee to take care of it.
Don, in every one of these bills, there's penalties involved. Is it because that state agencies want to make money, or are they legitimately doing it for people to have to follow the rules?
Yeah, so, it's the carrot and the stick. And so if you don't have any negative responsibilities, why would you listen? Why would you do it? And things like that. There's got to be some consequences to breaking the law, or not being a good management company, or not managing it properly as a condo association according to standards. I mean, you join a condo association because you want it to be maintained well, at least the outside of your property. You want the landscaping, you want it cleaned, you want it fixed, and things like that. You don't want to be responsible for that. Your days of mowing are gone, and so you're willing to pay a fee for that.
Dave, last word on this, if you want it.
Yeah, I think your question about the funding, the way the DCA works, at least when it comes to condominiums and inspections, in a lot of ways, it does seem like a self-funding sort of entity. The government charges, in my view, exorbitant fees to do inspections. Then they charge fines for violations. Then they charge for re-inspections. And so in order to maintain a level of funding, they have to do more inspections. So, but that's a very cynical view of it. Another view would be that they're keeping people safe. My experience for sort of on the ground in dealing with some of the DCA people, I find there's more concern over paperwork and process and funding than there is over actually making sure that people are safe. And it's hard to really explain my view on that without going into it in more detail and go through how these things actually work, other than to say that when the government believes it finds violations of the codes, it forces the association to make repairs, but it doesn't actually care whether the repairs are made. It just wants to force the association to do it. And there's this weird sort of pass the buck thing because the government can't force its way into your house because fortunately there's the Constitution. So they have to create a mechanism where the association is responsible for it, and then the association enforces the code. But the government doesn't seem that concerned as to whether or not the repairs are actually ever made. It's just more concerned about whether or not it can check boxes off and close out the inspection. There's a 5-year cyclical inspection, then there are re-inspections. But I could be I might be overly cynical about it. That's just sort of the way I have experienced it. I'm sure that the DCA folks, many of whom are proper dedicated civil servants, probably have a different view of it.
Anyone who watches on the live streams on a regular basis, Dave, would never think that you're cynical. Never. Bill 8637, Don. It says that boards can't benefit directly from having family members get contracts and a whole bunch of other shady business. I would probably call this the board shady business law. Am I off base?
No, not at all. When you're an elected official, you have to rise to the standard, and you can't have family members, blood, close relatives and friends getting awards or associations. It's the same thing with a condo association. If you belong to the condo association, represent everyone else, you don't have the right to be bidding for any services that they provide. You got to keep it clean.
Why do we need the government involved in this? It seems like there's already things and mechanisms in place not to make this happen.
Well, this is an interesting one, particularly because the law does not reflect what most people assume it reflects. And I've experienced this with my clients and board members. So for instance, currently you have a board and the board president's brother-in-law owns a landscaping company. The law does not prohibit that condominium from hiring the brother-in-law's company. It requires disclosure, abstentions on voting, a lot of technical sort of approaches, but it doesn't automatically foreclose the possibility that you could engage in that sort of conduct. The law, when it was created, I guess, was taking a more tolerant view of the fact that in some cases it might be a good idea to hire the brother-in-law's landscaping company. If I were the brother-in-law, I wouldn't want the job, too much aggravation if I was working with my brother-in-law, but I could see why the legislature had that law from decades ago. This is law from decades ago. So, but most people, I think, would say that they'd be surprised to find out that a condo board could hire the brother-in-law of the board president to do landscaping. They'd be surprised. Even people of good nature and that aren't cynical, they would be surprised that that's legal as long as it's disclosed. So I think this law attempts to, codify what most people probably think is already the law. Because as I said before, my board members are surprised when I tell them, I want to hire my, my cousin to be the property manager. That's got to be illegal, right? Well, no, it's not. You just have to disclose it. You got to vote on it correctly. You got to have you got to abstain in certain ways. It's not illegal automatically. This law, I think, would make it illegal. Not like you go to prison for it, but would prohibit it. And I think most people, though, would think it's already the law, but it's really not. So this is an interesting one. I don't know if it's a good law or not. I'm just saying that I think it reflects, what most Americans probably think is already the law. They'd be surprised to hear that you can hire your daughter to be the property manager of a condo that you are the board president of. They'd be surprised to hear that.
I meant one example here, Dave. I don't know if it's accurate. You could tell me. Board members or their family for 1 year after their service on the board. Or immediate family. I don't know off the top of your head if you know that's accurate or not. I got it off my internet research.
Well, no, I think I'd have to look at the law. I think, it creates, it's not just covering the time when the person's actually on the board. One of the bad things, based on what I can tell from this law, pending law, that does not reflect reality, which is the opposite of what I just said when it comes to board members and their family members. Management companies now, even the most high-end professional management companies, have ancillary services. They have a maintenance company they own. They have a pool company they own. They have superintendent employees that they hire out to do work. And that's usually welcomed by the communities, as long as there's no fraud and nonsense. But if it's all above board, that usually creates an economies of scale benefit to the communities. A management company will say, well, we'll charge you $10 a month to do this work. But if you also hire our maintenance company, we'll charge you $8 a month. That most boards and owners respond favorably to that, at least have the option available. This law would seem to prohibit that and make it always improper for a management company to do that. And I think that could be a mistake because management companies, I think, believe they can minimize their expenses, like Don was talking about, where you try to limit the amount of assessments people are paying. I think management companies feel like they can keep that number lower if they're able to get revenue from ancillary types of things.
Dave, I don't see where it says management companies on here.
You sure?
Am I giving? Well, I'm not sure. That's why you're here.
Oh.
I'm taking my information off the internet, and I like to do that just so our viewers could see that you don't want to take information off the internet. While you're checking on that,
It says
Don.
Yes.
Well, let me. While you're looking into that, let me ask Don something.
Right.
Don, this seems like a winner for politicians, right? Like, the HOA board, they're all a bunch of greedy, they're all in it and they're all making a buck. Why wouldn't something like this pass, whether or not it's 100% really a viable solution to a problem or not?
Because blood overrides just decisions. And so you can't have this type of connection. You can't have your family members assigned anywhere. If your brother-in-law is the best landscaper, then resign for the board, wait the 18 months, let him bid and be the lowest qualified bidder. But you can't have someone that's related to you receiving a contract that you're responsible for and that you're going to be determining whether or not they're performing it properly.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Don. I'm saying, why would this not pass? This,
It
for
should.
politicians, this seems like everybody's going to be for it, whether they're not going to dive into the details, but they love it, right?
Yes.
Why is this going to pass?
Yes.
Dave, where is that going to leave associations then? And did you find out about the management company?
I looked at my notes, and I mean, I read one of the lines to seemingly cover employees hired to manage the common elements, which to me is a property manager. But then there's also a part that seems to limit it only to officers and board members. So I'd have to dig deeper into it. It would make sense that it would not include the management companies for the exact reason why I said it would be a mistake to include the management companies. So it would make sense to me that it would exclude it. It would be more logical to cover board members because, as I said, I think most people think that it's already prohibited, that they would think it's already prohibited for a board member, for a board to vote to hire a company that is owned by a board member or owned by a board member's child or that sort of thing. Most people probably think that's already prohibited, but it's definitely not prohibited.
But the big money's with the management companies, like if they're not disclosing it. I mean, if they're disclosing it fine and you're benefiting from it, it makes a lot of sense, right? I'm not against it, but the real big bucks is, let's face it, is non-disclosure by management companies.
Right. And the larger management companies, they're very reputable management companies, and there are definitely a lot of them that engage in ancillary services. They have large disclosure documents that are attached to their management company, management contracts. They list them. By the way, we have affiliations in this bank, and these affiliations beyond just owning a pool company. They go towards, some management companies get a percentage of deposits in certain banks. They get a percentage in the number of insurance policies they write. And none of this is, I'm not suggesting any of it's inappropriate. It's probably a good way for associations to limit their expenses when they can hire a management company that has a broad way to make money. But the disclosures are very important. And some management companies have disclosures that are like 2 or 3 pages long.
Okay. So Dave, let's dive into this and set up a date maybe for a live stream on this. Don, when is this going to pass? What's the time frame?
It's not, because it's not become before the board yet. Or for the Assembly or the Senate.
I thought you said you were confident that this one would pass.
No, I'm sorry. When I said that, I meant if it came to us, I don't see how it would not pass.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm sorry, it's a big difference and stuff. You got to get it on the floor for a vote.
Yeah, I think Don's saying that, what we see on TV isn't the real world. It's not like citizen legislature goes to Trenton after a really solid election, walks on the Senate or Assembly floor, says, hey, everybody, all those in favor of doing this, vote aye. I think it goes like a committee. Whoever's in charge of the committee is very powerful. He or she decides what gets to the floor. And if that legislature doesn't like it, it could be the greatest law in the world. It's not getting anywhere near getting voted.
Don, have you ever stormed the legislative meeting, made a great speech like Benjamin Franklin or something like I've seen on the movies? And then like even your opponents stand up and applaud you, and then everyone pats you on the back and it becomes law right then and there. Has that ever happened?
No, never happens like that. What happens is you stand up, you make that great speech, you get the applause, and then the opposing party says, I move to table it. Then you vote whether or not you're going to table it or not, and the whoever the party is in charge tables it, and it disappears, and things like that, and you move on. So in any given session of the legislature, you'll hear 3 or 4 people stand up and make an impassioned plea, helping disabled vets get their property tax reduced by the percentage of their disability and things. Everyone likes that. Then someone stands up and said, I move to table. They table it. That's the end of that. You get to copy what you said, send it back to your people that voted you. They all applaud you, thinks it's great. It's good for radio commentary and things, but it goes nowhere.
Why, Don? If it's something that is just so if everyone's on board both sides of the aisle, is it, for lack of a better, is it laziness? Is it why would it not go through the process?
Don't have that answer after 4 years and things. It's just that, with bills that I have, in some cases, I have a good enough relationships with North Jersey, Central Jersey, with Democrats and Republicans. They allow me to get through a bill. But without listing a specific bill, I had a bill that was on that Democrats loved. They just didn't want a Republican being the sponsor. And so they just literally removed my name and gave it to a Democrat. And then, she called me up and said, hey, I feel really bad, but they just took your name off and put my name on this bill and things. And I said, well, the bill's important enough to get through. I'm in the minority party. I need to get the legislation through. I don't need my name to be on it.
Okay. I don't feel any better, Don, since we started these than I do when we're done. All right. Thank you.